Here we are, halfway through our summer Zazenkai. It's so nice to be together, practicing all together. A day like this, the days are getting a little cooler, maybe a little more comfortable than it was last month. Still, I think it sounds. So are you shifting out of your conventional mind yet? Yeah. Been sitting for 4 or 5 hours. We have a few people who've joined us for the afternoon and a few people who left from the morning. So maybe those of you who just joined have picked up something, the energy, the mind space, I've been cultivating here in the Zendo for a few hours. And this quality of mind, this samadhi that we develop is, it really is quite different from our conventional, way of holding ourselves with respect to body and mind. So it's a different and deeper quality. So this conventional mind causes us a lot of problems. It gets attached to ideas and feeling states. This is a very, very powerful practice to allow us to shift out of that conventional mind space and to cultivate this deeper quality of mind, a meditative mind, meditative consciousness. They say in the Gatha that we just said that the Dharma was very subtle, and it is very subtle. But reality is subtle. The thinking mind often isn't very subtle. That's the problem. The thinking mind it's very gross. It's one of the problems. It's just very gross. It doesn't appreciate, the texture, the real texture of experience. So our practice is really to become intimate with the subtleties of mind, which means also the subtleties of body, because we're talking about body and mind. So the subtle nuances of feeling that arise, the subtle shades of emotion that we feel in our practice. And it's one way you can actually have a perspective or a view of how deep your practice is when you're really experiencing the subtleties and nuances of feeling and emotion and even thought. Maybe we have a notion of, being awakened is where it's all just blazingly bright and there's no subtlety. There's no nuance in that kind of view. It's all just blazing bright. Not so much, That's it's just one state, actually, to be like that. But it's the subtle, nuanced, layered richness that we still experience as being all, interpenetrating. That's kind of the really awakened consciousness is experiences reality. So I want to talk about non-doing. That's the theme I offered for today's Zenkai, and I've had a question or two about it already. So I thought I would take the time during Dharma talk here to speak a bit about this. Many of you know Dogen's teaching about non-thinking. And so I'm going to start talking about Dogen and non-thinking, and then I'll kind of just extend it to non-doing, because it's basically the same thing with a little bit, perhaps more, or maybe less about it when we look at non-doing. But it's basically the same, right? So Dogen's teachings on non-thinking kind of derived from a famous exchange between the 9th century Zen master Yaoshan and a monk. So the monk asks, "What are you thinking of sitting there so fixedly?" This must have been a very beginner monk, I think, to ask Yashan that. What are you thinking about, Master? And Yashan, instead of ignoring him or kicking him out of the zendo, which maybe some would do, actually answers him, I think, with a real productive way. I'm thinking of not thinking. Thinking of not thinking. The monk said, how do you think of not thinking? And Yashan said, non-thinking. Dogen quotes this and he says, this is the essential art of Zazen. Non-thinking. Non-thinking. So let's appreciate this non-thinking. Non-thinking doesn't mean not thinking, right? It's beyond thinking and not thinking. This non-thinking. Maybe we should have a different word for it. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, can we come up with a word? Thinking? If anyone has anything, just shout it out. Okay. Breathing.
Emptiness.
Well, we need the verb. We need the verb tense in there because, yeah. So I'm going to go with non-thinking until I get something better.
Being.
Being. Okay. Being. Yeah. What I get a lot of value because it's pointing to thought, like how to work with thought. Okay. I'm gonna go with non-thinking.
Sometimes waiting is productive for me.
Okay. So it's not thinking and it isn't not thinking. Right? It's about thinking, your thinking taking on a different character. Right? Your actual thinking takes on a different character. So Dogen's non-thinking has been described as beyond ego-centric cognition. Right. So it's a state, it's a state, or you could say that it's an activity, it's not thinking, where one isn't caught by thought. Ego-centric cognition. It's kind of a fancy term, isn't it? I definitely need to think in order to understand that. Okay, so let's kind of unpack that. Let's get a better sense of what that is, because non-thinking is not that. How do we know when we're doing ego-centric cognition? Okay. This is an open question for you, actually. So I'm just going to venture into it with my experience. There's a feeling, there's a feeling when I've got a self-centeredness, with my mentalizations, my conceptualizations. It's almost like a gravity. There's something there. There's something there. Yeah, there's something there. Maybe it's the something there that's doing the thinking, that's working with it, cogitating it, something there. Oftentimes there's an emotional charge. There's an emotional charge that doesn't necessarily seem to be about, the thought itself, but it's kind of underneath the thought. So when I'm there, and I'm not saying that always means I'm doing ego-centric cognition, but yeah. There's like a compulsiveness to my thoughts oftentimes, cycling around something. I can tell it isn't free flowing. It's constrained somehow. I need to get something. I need to get a feeling or a sense of control or a sense of understanding. something like that. You need to orient yourself in some way. So right within this egocentric cognition, as I experience it for myself, can be a sense of confusion that I don't want to feel, or a sense of instability that I don't want to feel. So I want to orient myself, or a sense of lostness. Where am I? That I don't want to feel. And that's the impulse behind this egocentric cognition. I can feel that. If I look, sometimes I'm, I miss it. Yeah. But then if I look at what my mind's doing, and I feel what is going on behind that, then I can sense that. Oh, okay. So that for me is egocentric cognition. That's not non-thinking. All of that's not non-thinking. Okay, it's something else. So I read this description of it. Unmoored from judgment, thoughts are like glitter, but there's no glue. Is that good? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So maybe we can all feel that, right? Thinking that's just the glitter versus the stuckness, this gooiness, this fix, and that might be a good idea, but it's all like stuck and a bunch of other stuff. Viscous. Okay. Here's another quality of non-thinking. Thinking becomes empty of intention. So the thinking is present, but it isn't grasped. There's usually intention in grasping. Right? There's usually intention in grasping. You want something, or you want to push it away. You want to control it. You want more of it. There's usually, almost always, that kind of intention within grasping. So can we think empty of intention? Yeah, what's the intention behind your thinking? And when you notice yourself thinking, see if there isn't something behind it, some motivation there. Remember, volitional action creates karma. Right? Volitional action creates karma. So the intentional action that's fueling this thinking activity is creating karma. Dogen says that's not non-thinking. Non-thinking. Non-grasping thinking. Not motivated by an intention. Open, allowing. Okay. So now I'm just going to extend those observations to non-doing. All right? Non-doing. It's not doing and it's not doing. It's beyond doing and not doing. This non-doing. All right. Now, of course, thinking is kind of a form of doing in a sense. So we're including thinking in this, but it also applies to our walking and to our samu and to our relating and all of the things that we traditionally mean, these activities that we kind of understand as doing. So can we do that? Do, non-doing, when we're doing those things. So it doesn't mean that doing stops. Rather, our doing takes on a different character. It's beyond egocentric doing. How do we know it's egocentric doing? This is maybe a little different than investigating egocentric thinking. Maybe it's easier, actually, but I do think it's different. I think it has that same feeling qualities. If we're doing something in an egocentric, in a very self-centered way, it can have those same sort of emotional charges. It can have those same, selfish intentions behind them, or self-protective intentions behind them. That same grasping quality to it. I think that egocentric doing succumbs to our hedonic impulses much more easily. Right? Well, if you're doing something solely for a personal reason, and then an obstacle arises, it doesn't feel good anymore, or it's painful, well, you're kind of doing it for yourself. But now I kind of like this better, so why don't I just stop? Right? You get hijacked by the hedonic impulse. The pleasure principle. So I think it's a good measure of how, egocentric you could say your doing is by how able you are to stay the course with it, to be steady, to be committed, to follow through in spite of, challenges and difficulties and obstacles and unpleasantnesses and pains. This isn't about, being a good person or being selfless. This is about practicing non-doing. Yeah. So when we're really doing non-doing or practicing non-doing, also it feels more joyful, more connection when we're doing non-doing. Always. Because we're opening ourselves up to a greater field of connection and a greater field of responsibility, a greater field of action. And our soul feels that. So doing becomes empty of intention. Our doing is present, but it isn't grasped. So can we act this way, with this spirit? And this is what we bring to our samu, which really we want to extend to our whole lives of activity. But, even with the weeding, which most of us did during the work practice period, and we just become completely absorbed in the weeding. Now, of course, there was a general objective, which is to clear the ground with the weeds. Okay. But in some ways, that's like tertiary. Mm-hmm. We know that getting that free of weeds is going to be really helpful, for the land. But we're never going to finish it, right? Never going to get all the weeds out. And Dogen says, flowers die although we love them, and weeds grow although we hate them. Always, 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 there will be weeds. So if you're weeding with the intention to completely get rid of all of the weeds in the garden, that's not the right attitude. It's not the attitude of practice, although that is the conventional attitude. Oh, I'm going to, meet this goal, meet this objective. No, but to do work with the spirit of non-doing, which is the spirit of samu, is just to do it with this intimate feeling of the nuance of what we're doing, with the spirit of, oh, I'm going to help these plants to grow. And with the spirit of, we do it, the Sangha, help this practice community, become more healthy. And just throw yourself into it. Everybody's got moments of this, right? In Samu and in Zazen. Yeah. So it seems, it might seem like that'll always be an exotic experience, and you're kind of chasing after those experiences. But actually, no, it grows to be your baseline. It can become more of your general way of being, is to live with non-thinking and non-doing. Really to be this way, not to be attached. I was, as I mentioned, this theme at the beginning of our Zazenkai today, and then I just popped out of my mouth was, I'm not going to tell you it's easy. I'm not going to tell you it's difficult. It's easy and difficult, and neither easy or difficult. And those, as some of you know, are the words from Layman Pong and his family, which just popped out. And I think it's relevant here because we like this non-thinking and this non-doing, and we're like, oh my God, really? But I think this framework, if you will, or perspectives, these like 4 perspectives actually from Layman Pong and his family, really apply to this non-thinking and non-doing. So I want to end with this. So Layman Pang has his wife and his daughter and his son, and they're all quite evolved beings. And Layman Pang was, did a lot of intense Dharma study, but he also was very much a outside of the monastery practice in the world master. All 4 of them actually were quite masters. But Layman Pang, I guess he was having a tough day. And he said, difficult. And he's talking about the spiritual path. It's like trying to cover a tree in sesame seeds. Or in another version, like trying to hit the moon with a stick. Right. So I like these images because it's like, why are you even trying to hit the moon with a stick? Why are you throwing sesame seeds at it? I mean, that's how like impossible, he's finding the spiritual path to be in that moment. And it can be like this. That's very true. It sort of seems like the out of jointness of things and the inability of me and my, say, limited self to like actually wake up to my true nature, to actually do this just seems impossible sometimes. So his wife, Laywoman Pang, replied, easy. It's like touching your feet to the floor when you get out of bed. Or it's like touching your nose when you wash your face. Right? So it can be completely natural. Completely natural. And effortless. From a certain mind of simplicity, it's brought to it. So we can engage in, our work, and sometimes it can be really difficult, and sometimes it can feel very natural and very easy. Sometimes Zazen can feel very difficult. Sometimes it can feel very natural and flowing and easy. But there's another layer deeper than these, and that's their daughter, Ling Zhao, who said it's neither difficult nor easy. It's the teaching of the ancestors shine everywhere on the tips of the 100 grasses. So when hungry, eat, when tired, rest. dimension of non-doing and non-thinking. Look here, neither difficult nor easy. Okay. Yeah. So what's the difference between easy and Lei Woman Pang's easy and Ling Zhao's neither easy nor difficult? When we look at the metaphors, well, in easy, we've got somebody getting up out of bed. Right? She's doing something. There's still a person, there's the person there, with intention. Okay, it's very simple and very organic, and that's good. So easy practice, but there's still someone there. Now at Ling Zhao's level, there's no one there. It's just the dew on every blade of grass. That's it. That's the spiritual path. Yeah. And then I had not known this until this morning, but their son actually was part of the party and had his own contribution. And you can imagine what it is. Because we have difficult, we have easy, we have neither difficult nor easy. So what's left? Both difficult and easy. And he helps us by saying, if you think it's difficult, it's difficult. If you think it's easy. Don't make difficult and easy. I kind of like this, right? The four, yeah, it's really like so. So non-thinking, that's our practice. That's our zazen. Non-doing, that's our practice. That's our samu. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes difficult, sometimes easy, sometimes neither difficult nor easy, sometimes whatever you make it. Yeah. Okay, what an interesting practice this is, right? So all day, we're only here for 8 hours or something like that. We're doing a good chunk of meditation. But how much are you moving through these states? Difficult one moment, easy the next, neither the next. We can move through these very rapidly. Yeah. So as you become more intimate with your mind, your body mind, and how it's working, this becomes quite an adventure. I hope it is for you already. Quite an adventure this day of practice.